Okay, so good morning, everyone, or evening, based on where you're attending this from. My name is Riyamana Sharma, and I'm the founder of Biology for Better. Now, my team members will be introducing themselves.
Hi, my name is Glenn, and I'm the Director of Logistics from Biology for Better.
G'day, my name's Nathan, and I'm the Director of Technology for Biology for Better.
Hello, my name is Cavell Simpson. I am the editor in chief.
All right. So we are so pleased that you are attending the Biology for Better Med School webinar, one which is sure to clear up any doubts you have about the medical admissions process and experience. Just a few things I'd like to go over. During the talk, everyone please keep your mics muted to avoid any disturbances. During the Q&A session, you may raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, and when we call your name, you may unmute it. Now I'd like to hand it over to Ms.Bhavya Pahwa, who is our special guest speaker today.
Thank you, Ria. Just a moment, I'll just share my screen, guys. Okay, fine, just loads on. So good morning, everyone. I'm really glad for you all to be here. And, I'm just assuming that all of you are preparing pretty hard to go to the med school. So first of all, kudos to that for, choosing such advice and a brave decision because going to the med school and going to medical school
Guys, Miss Bhavya is having a little technical difficulty, so we'll just give her a couple of minutes.
I'm sorry, guys. Looks like my internet just broke off. I'm really sorry. Um, let's go on from the rack here. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever, and what kind of time zones you might all be. So, before we begin with the med school, it's such a vice and a strong, a brave decision for all of you to even choose and think about going to something like med school because it takes, first of all, a lot of courage. It takes a lot of your mental health. It takes a lot of work because not everyone can go into med school. I mean, no judgment, but exactly, you'll have had to work a lot to pass through all the sessions that you have had to take before going to a med school. So, just a little bit about me. Who am I? I'm just like another one, a bit senior to you. I'm a medical student in India and aim to be a neurosurgeon come researcher. I'm the first president for the Dani Neurosurgical Club India. I'm also the founder of Iridescent, which is the first ever SOGI an LGBT rights promoting club in any Indian institution. I'm the director for SRISOG, that is the Sexual and Reproductive Health Educational Society of GAMES. So GAMES is a global association of Indian medical students, and all those who are Indian medical students, you just get ready, you'll get a lot of games in your coming years if you get into med school. And my hobbies are just like, dancing, painting, and I'm a great core heart fan of Taylor Swift. So all those who don't like Taylor Swift, don't talk to me. Moving ahead, as I mentioned, I like painting. These are some of my artworks, which I have just, some of my good artworks. The first painting here, which I made, I got a full sponsored trip to United States, the fish one, which is basically for um, water pollution. Then we have an integrated Indian culture, which is so wide that, India is known for its unity and diversity all over the world. And this is just another art pieces which have just, talked about the blood transfusion and all that stuff, which is like, how it instills life in you. So, guys, let's talk a bit about that, how med school is, what happened med school, and then we'll see that, how to get through taking admission in a great med school in your country or somewhere else if you want to go. So, like it's supposed to be an interactive session. I just begin with, this was my first ever day at med school when, we were given that white coat ceremony. And I was like extremely like happy. Like I come from a doctor family, so I wasn't like that much excited as people were because they were just jumping all over. But I was pretty happy because, you get to wear your own coat with your own name. It's the best feeling of the world. Trust me, when I enter the med school and you have that coat and your stethoscope on, you feel like you're in itself. But 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 you know that you aren't a doctor then. You cannot make diagnoses and just kill people like that. So yeah, that was my first day. This is a day when I just went over to the psych hack department of my hospital and I went just over to see, the terrace and all how the stream looks like. That was a really good experience for me because, like I mentioned, that I'm really much into neurosciences and neurosurgery, most specifically. But like psychiatry and depression disorders are one part of neurology, of neurosciences as a whole. That was like pretty intriguing for me to see patients over there. And the one thing that touched me within where I decided, like, I had chances to be into neurology, but the thing that just touched me inside was about schizophrenia. I saw a schizophrenic mother, and it just gave me a cold shiver through my spine. I just couldn't see her, like, it was just devastating for me to see her like that. And this is one of the conferences at the U Chicago Center where I went over to accompany my professors, the one who's on the left of me. He's a disabled personality, but he's one of the top 30 most influential persons in the disabled community in the world. And that conference was really nice. So if we summarize from this slide, how is med school? You get the best feeling of the world when you wear a coat, but remember, don't make diagnoses because you're just in first year, you know nothing. You may know nothing, you may read books and all, but that's not enough unless and until you get an experience on hand to get into the hospital and interact with patients. You cannot just give a diagnosis. Then and when you're in med school, it's not just all about studies. Yes, you have been through, like, people, they used to tell me during my preparation times that once you get into med school, once you get into college, your life will be this, your life will be that. But trust me, none of that is true. Yes, it is a bit, I would say relieved. It's a bit enjoyable as compared to the one in your high school or your senior years, is what is called in USA. But it's not really like that because medical school is not another man's job. I'm not demotivating you here, but I'm really glad that you had the courage to come to that point where you have decided to take a part in. You get to go through a lot of things. You'll have to study a lot. But again, nothing comes easy. You just can't go on and say that, okay, I'm in med school, I'll pass. Passing is should not be the only motive. Once you get into medical school, make sure that you have to be a good doctor, a doctor who knows how to treat patients, a doctor who can correlate things and can come to a diagnosis on the spot. I would suggest you, if you ever get time, you should start watching web series. I think the people, if there are anyone from these states or anyone from the Scandinavian countries, that might have watched, but I started watching those doctor shows very late, like just like in my first year of med school. You could go for House MD, you can watch The Good Doctor, Amsterdam, New Amsterdam, Grey's Anatomy, which is pulled off through the Amazon Prime. So, once you watch these, you really get to see how the life of a doctor is. It's not really 100% correct, but you really, you could correlate with it. At least I could. And once you start watching it, once you're in your med school, you just see that, oh my God, this is what's going to happen to me after like some 3 or 4 years down the line. So you can also, once you're in med school, it's not just about studies. You can just go on with doing so many co-curricular activities, but make sure that you're not, studying all the time. Like our main motive should be and become an all-rounder. Like just give it a thought, what use it is if you're just delving into books and you don't have the communication skills to talk to someone. You don't have the courage, you don't have the confidence to come up and say that, no, this is wrong. This should not be the criteria for diagnosing a disease or something like that. So make sure at this very point of time where you guys are, you must, your main motive right now should be to get into med school no matter what. Study a lot. I'll be talking about, my strategies and what made me to get into the top 3 med schools of my country. But right now, make sure your prime motive is studies. Put your phones, put your gadgets right there in the hell or something like that. If there's anything in your closet or something, just don't use it. And if you think that, you have that self-control, I did not have. Like I was a person, I just picked up my phone every single hour and just see that, oh my God, I got this message. But that should not be the case. I just went over to, the small phones, I would say the conservative ones. And that too, I did not use. Just put it in my closet. Like my father used to help, yell at me all the time that you don't pick up the phone, you don't do this. And I was like, I don't want a phone. I need to study. So we'll just come over to that in a while. The left picture here is me just overreacting or dramatics because I love dramatics. I'm a good actor, I would say. And this is one of the photos at a fest. So if we talk about what are fests and what are basically some sort of festivals or like that. So once you get into med school, every med school has its own fest. I don't know really about the high schools because in some parts of the world, high schools are also having like fetes, exhibitions, fests. I did, but the fest that you get to go to in your college and mid school, there's something else. They're just out of the world. You get to learn so many things. You get to grow up as a person. You meet so many people, and but just you have to be wise to know to whom to correlate with. And the picture over here on the right is one of the hackathons that I won recently in October 2020, which was organized by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology under MIT COVID-19 Challenge. So just a bit note here, guys, even in high school, you can work on because as we'll be talking about in the admission process, which is, different for different countries. So if you talk about a country like United States, you have to go like, do a lot of stuff. Just some entrance exam is not sufficient. You have to have so many co-curriculars, so many community working. So if, you get to win some kind of hackathons, I would suggest the healthcare hackathons that's going to be really, really beneficial for you. And the kind of hackathons that MIT organizes, like, or at least organized in the last past year, that was mainly about ideas. It was mainly about hypotheses. You don't have to give a prototype. Just storm your mind, think of a problem. Just think of a problem that's in front of you. You see it all day. And one more thing I'd like to emphasize here is that, the biggest problems are those which you see and you don't pay attention to. They're there itself in front of your eyes every day at your home. You see them. Like if I talk about like, my mother's in her menopause now, menopause is a big problem. You could come up, who knows, you can come up with, in the next 20 years with some sort of an artificial estrogen who can, do every sort of stuff, but just not cancer. So, think of solutions, think of the problems which are there in front of you. Don't dive into much details because you'll dive into details once you go into med school, once you go to your residency, you do your PhD or whatever you want to. But as of now, as a student who's preparing for medical thing or the one who wants to be in med school or the one who is in med school, Just think of the problems which are very easy. Look around, look for arthritis, talk about diabetes. There's so many problems which are killing people every day. That's what you have to think, and that's what's going to take you to that level. So, guys, like I just talked about, the life at med school, it's mixed feelings. If you are native to the place where you got your med school, you're just lucky enough. Like I belong to some place other than New Delhi where my med school is located. So, it's pretty difficult for me to travel. Like obviously I don't travel all the day, but it's like I'll have to live in the hostel. And you get on your own, but that's not bad because you get to learn. You get to things independently. So, whenever if ever you just get a med school, you have to be prepared for all sorts of, trauma or mental stress you might get by living in a place where you would not like to, like it did not, but it just eventually goes with time because, you have to be goal fixed. You have to know what you have to do. And if you see, because, there would be voices around, there will be so many voices, they won't let you breathe, they won't let you think. But if your mind is fixed to one certain goal and one certain position, there's nothing that can get you back. You have to be, I would say that there's something called emotional intelligence. These days, I would say, like some sort of sixth sense or some sort of secondary to the international to the intelligent questions, but emotional intelligence is a very, very integral part of everyone. Like let's say you're preparing for med school and a party comes on, or let's say some sort of your family function or a wedding comes up. What would you do? Either go to the party or you don't. Now it totally depends upon how determined you are. Like I remember I never went to any of the family functions. I never showed up my face to anyone except from my coaching classes or except from the classes that I took for the medical school examination. But I never went to any such sort of festivity. It was just I know it was 2 years which I have had to give to get me to where I am right now, and I'm so happy because once you get into med school, you have so many things in front of you. You have so many medical organizations to work with. You have so many more things to do. You can work on research topics. You can be, maybe some youngest person doing some brand new thing. No one knows that. So there's so many things. Just think of, just don't think that you'll have had to study a lot. Being a medical professional, no matter what, wherever you go, you'll have to study throughout your life. Like I see my mother and my father, they have, they study every day. They study every day on their tablet, they study every day on their laptop. They talk to me, we study together. So, being a medical professional, it's studying every day, every point of time, but it comes up with the added benefit of the respect of the independence that you get in your life. So, guys, moving on to admission process, it's pretty different for different countries. If I talk about my country, India, so there is some sort of an examination that is called National Entrance Cum Examination Test. That's called NEET, and that's a uniform, a universal examination to get into any medical college in India. So what happens is that in India we can directly go into med school after our senior years, if that's what you call in the states, or you could say senior high school, that is the 11th and 12th grade. So after our 12th grade, we go directly into med school. We don't have to do any some sort of a course in the university, unlike United States or some Scandinavian countries. We can directly go there, provided we have we have a reliable score in the NEET that I just mentioned. So it's an examination which is having 180 questions of 4 marks and -1. +4 -1 is the marking criteria, and it's having 180 questions, 90 questions for physics, 90 for chemistry, and 180 for biology. So all these three subjects together form a total marks of 720. I got 680 out of 720, and I got into the fourth, or I think the third highest school in my country. So it's like, you start your preparation right from your 11th grade. There are people, who are starting from ninth grade itself, but I was so stupid enough to not know that, I wanted to do that because I was so, I'm such kind of an unstable personality that there was a time I wanted to be an astronaut. I still remember I was in third grade. I used to make those drawings of astronauts. I didn't become one astronaut, but I did win many prizes on that astronaut drawing. And then I went on to become a painter. I went on to become a dancer. And now here I am becoming a doctor and a researcher. And I own it because, when I was in ninth grade, there was a time when I remember I did my first project that was on bioplastics from banana peels. And that was a point that, when I started working on something related to biology. So, if you have to get into a good med school, like let's say I've been mentioning so far in states or in Scandinavian countries, like let's say Kingdom. So you'll have had to do, many co-curricular things, which you get time because you are in the university doing some course. So you get a lot of 3 to 4 years time to do some sort of stuff. But if you are someone like me who's going to go into med school directly after a 12th grade or your high school, if you talk about my country, you have to just give that examination. And if you score pretty decent marks over there, depending upon, how the difficulty level of that examination, you get into a very good med school. And the point is that, like I mentioned, you have to be very, very, I would say, sacrificial in all those 2 years because even a mark can cost you. Like I remember I was just 1 mark behind to get into number one college of India. That was All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And it just killed me. Like, there was a point where I was so depressed. I did not talk to anyone for approximately 2 months. I was like, I'm gonna take a drop. I'll give it next year again. I'll prepare and I'll might get into AIMS. But then there are people who make you understand the worth of what I have been through. So I just went over to the med school, but just make sure that you're studying very hard. The point is that I'm not really sure about the, how examinations are conducted in other countries. But if you talk about India, then, or I think everywhere, physics makes a lot about it. People might cram biology. I should not say all our biology people here, but biology is something which can be crammable, to be honest. But not until you have an interest in it. You cannot just cram it if you don't like what DNA or an RNA is. You can't just see, if you can't remember or memorize the angiospermy or the Solanaceae families. It's just all about, if you have some interest, like I mentioned, I started developing my interest in biological sciences when I was as soon as an eighth or ninth grade when I did my first project. And it's all about, biology is crammable. Chemistry is some sort of a midway, I would say, but physics is something which will take the hell out of you. I still remember, when I was in 11th grade, I was preparing. So we had this division of syllabi that was that some sort of syllabus was in 11th grade, some was in 12th grade, but the the syllabus of physics was so extensive and so robust that it wasn't sufficient. You have to be very sure in the kind of, I would say, the books and the coaching material you're using. There are many people who go without using any of those. I'm sorry. But I would suggest that if you're feeling or facing any difficulty in any examinations, let's say if it's physics or I think it's math as well in the United States, I'm not really sure. But if it's physics or chemistry or even biology, and you're certain that you have had to be into medical professional lines, then I would suggest, you could look for videos. Like you can go for, there are many channels over YouTube. There are many, many coaching people out there in your localities. You might not be knowing, you just have to search for them. But all you need to know is that don't stick, just don't stick to what you like to do because that's what is all about preparation in med school. You have to get out of that shell. You have to get out of that box. It's not that okay. It's like I like physics. I won't do if I won't do chemistry and biology. If that would have been the case, I would have never been where I am. Because as I mentioned, physics is just having 90 questions, which gives me 90 into 4, 360 marks out of 720, which is just 50%. And you never know that, under stress, hypertension, or any some sort of, depression or stress, you might get 2 or 3 questions wrong, and then you end up with nothing. What's the use of doing those 2 years into so much preparation if you can't get where you're going? All you need to know is you have to be a bit more sacrificial, I would say, because this is a time where, firstly, the pandemic has hit everyone so bad that, the mental state is deteriorating, I would say. And to hold yourself in such a mental state, it's first of all very commendable. And if you go through that and you could, read and understand what's been written in your books or the material you're referring to, that's really great. Other than that, I would just suggest that, the way I studied was like I wasn't a really active person in my 11th grade. I really did not study that much. I was like, okay, I might get through. Now I'll tell you why. So, sometimes you have to be very wise in choosing the material you're studying. You have to be very wise what books you're studying from and what books you're excluding. Because there was a book from publishers called MTG, which comes with the name of Ames Explorer in my country, that showed about the previous year examination papers. So, when I solved them, I was like, okay, these are pretty easy. I might get through very easily to Ames. Why do people talk about, oh my God, it's very difficult? But the point was that the examination for Ames until my time was conducted separately. And they had an online examination. The papers were not out. Those were just based on memory. So the examinations that the papers that came out, no one knew ever that were they correct or were they just some sort of a stunt. So I told them, and my two whole 11th, when I was in 11th grade, I never paid attention because I was like, okay, I might do it. But once I stepped into 12th grade and once, I took some distance learning program of a coaching. And that was the coaching which, gave top 50 maximum people every year. So I was like, okay, let me try them. They're known for like a lot of things. And that was a time when I realized that, oh my God, this is not something that I've been through the whole my 11th grade. And that was a time where I had to buckle up because there was either working the way I was working, which is a bit lenient, be a bit chilled out, or I could be a bit more sacrificial off my sleep, off my social media times. I didn't really have social media, but yeah, did talk to some people. I'll have to cut that social media time. I'll have to cut the time I spent with my family over TV or, surfing internet or listening to Taylor Swift. So there were these two options, and I had to take the second one because, as I told you, you have to be very determined about your goal. Now that you've taken this path of going to med school, be adhered to it. Give your best. Don't think of other alternative that, okay, if I don't get med school, I'll do that. I'll do that. No. You don't know what's going to happen through that course. You don't know, you might end up, topping the examination. You don't know, you might end up getting the best college of your country. You don't know, you might end up in the best country of the world and getting the best college there. All you know right now is that you can study, you can work, you can be determined enough to not let anyone sidetrack you. Because, there will be nuisances, I would say, in your life. There will be distracting forces. But if you get a command right now, that would be best. Because, as you move towards adulting, you get to know things, you get to experience them. But once you are in a stage where you are, and I have been through that stage like you, there are very, very distractions. I've seen people with me, those who were the top scorers in the Olympiads in my school, in my city. They ended up getting nothing, nothing. Trust me, they ended up getting nothing. Or I would say, the college, they didn't get the best colleges. All they've got was a quota through which to get into a college. But those people were distracted. They couldn't make up. The top scorers from Olympiads get nothing. So you don't need to get, disheartened that okay, I'm a top square at Olympiad. Will I get nothing? No, that's not the case. All you need to do is that you have to be determined. Like you've been through your school times, just be for like 2 or 3 more years. Nothing's gonna harm you. And if we talk about, different subjects, I don't really have an idea that how there is some sort of division to that, but like, I researched a bit. So I think physics, chemistry, and biology are there in I think every part of the country, in every country of the world, if not all, like in most of them. So the whole summary for this preparation thing was that you have to, you know, give your time to number one in which you are very weak. Like if you talk about me, I told you that, in my whole 11th grade, I wasn't really active. So my physics wasn't really that good to a level. But once I entered my 12th grade and I saw that, oh my God, this is not something that I used to do or I have to do, I went over to do 4 books of physics, not just of med school, but of engineering, because that just brushes up your concepts. I'm not saying go to engineering books and see that, because they also had physics. I'm not asking you to go and look for that. But if you think that it's going to help you understand things better, just do anything that helps you understand better. Just do anything that will help you to get to where you're going. And once you get to where you're going, where you have to be, once you get there, and when you look around and you look back and you see that there has been you and only you and the people who put you there, that would be the greatest feeling of the world. This is not just for med school, this is for your throughout your life, because you have to be very wise enough on whom you have to discuss things with. Like if you talk about me, I didn't have any friends in 11th and 12th grade. I had no one. I just had one person whom I could talk to, but that too I minimized because as I mentioned that, my 11th grade wasn't really nice. You have to be very, careful in the material you're using because as I mentioned, it can do this. It can fork you apart from where you're going. You have to be very, wise enough. And there's also like some people told me that you don't need to work hard, you need to work wisely. Don't believe those people because you have to do both. You have to work hard and you have to work wisely. What's use is of wisdom if you're not putting enough hours to your study? And what's use is that working hard if you're not understanding what you're doing? It's not necessary that you're just sitting for a whole like I studied for some 18 to 20 hours in my 8th grade, but I'm sorry, in my 12th grade. But if you talk about in my 11th grade, I was like, okay, some 8 to 9 or 7 to 8 hours. There was a whole gradation of double the hours that I had to put in because the syllabus was clubbed. It was all a hodgepodge sort of tough. You had to be very careful. And I would suggest that, you keep on revising things on a daily pattern because there would be a time when you'll start forgetting them. We all are humans. We all have brains, but our memories are not that very sharp. Like I mentioned that I love neurology, so let's talk a bit about the neurological aspect of our brain. There's something called synaptic plasticity. You might have heard of it, or there's something called neuronal plasticity. So, once you keep on learning things, once you keep on reading things on a daily basis, there are new neuronal connections because of plasticity that are formed in your frontal cortex and your hippocampus. Hippocampus is the center for memory, and cerebellum is the center for learning. So you have to, keep on doing that stuff which is bothers you. Like if I say I wasn't really good at physics at the beginning in my 11th grade, but as I kept on doing questions on a daily basis, as I kept on doing more and more studies, as I kept on doing more and more theory and practicals, the more I studied, the more I did questions, the more I practiced, the more connections I got in my brain. And that was the point, which got me through just 2 questions that I got incorrect in physics. And Yes, so you have to just be very wise enough in choosing what you have to do. Now, if we talk about United States, so you have to get, some sort of an undergraduate degree in the field of sciences. As I mentioned, you need to have 3 to 4 years experience at the university after your high school. I don't know what kind of curriculum it is, but again, every country has their own sort of things for which you need to get a minimum GPA of 3.0 in your university final examinations, and you need to have a minimum MCAT score. You can also opt for other countries you know, um, like you can go to some sort of countries like Mauritius, Peru, South American countries, African countries. But I'll just mention something here. Don't get lured by other countries just because your culture, like if I compare India to USA, no matter USA is the most developed countries of the world, and yes, my country is still struggling to get to that level. We are developing, we are trying to become very smart, but India has the most robust, the most extensive medical learning curriculum in the world history. That's there in the Guinness Book of World Records. Because what we are taught here, like I told you, that we get into med school right after our 12th grade. So the teachers have to be a bit careful that, they're just kids. They entered after 12th grade. They just know very little about human body. They will know very little about blood. They know very little about so many things. So we are given a lot of attention. But again, if you don't, no matter what med school you go, but if you yourself don't have that determination to study and get through there, no one can help you. You just can't go there. At the end, everyone becomes a doctor. Everyone passes examination. Everyone gets to know, how to give IV transfusion, how to get into the human body. But at last, what matters is you are an all rounder. You're not just one person who's giving injections. You're not just one person who's doing surgeries. You have to be an all rounder. You need to know how to deliver talks. You need to know how to talk to patients. You need to know how to talk to the attendants of patients who died in front of your table. And once you master the skill of all those things, eventually with time, but if you begin right now by getting some taste of emotional intelligence and, holding yourself and making yourself that, okay, I can do this, no one can stop you. You can offer other countries, but again, there's no use, to be very frank. I'll be honest that, the people who went to other countries like Ukraine or Mauritius or Thailand or like, the Asian countries from my country, from my batch in my high school or my senior years, those were the people who didn't score well, you know, those are the people who didn't get anything in India. And by anything in India, you can know that, how big our population is, which means we do have a lot of med schools. But again, the more the population, the more are the competing people, the less are the seats. So you have to stand out of those 15 lakh people. Well, 15 lakh was the point, or it's like 1.5 million people who gave examinations in 2019 when I did. And I was 1/20th amongst them to get into the third most college of the country. The reason being because I was determined. You just everything is based on determination. I know it's very difficult to say right now. You have to be very patient, you have to be perseverant. All these are pretty fancy words that, okay, patient, perseverant, determination. And right now I know things might be getting into your brain, but to actually act them in life, it is very, very hard. It's very difficult because you really have to master that point in your brain when you just have to master that point in your brain, which is stopping you to say that, okay, you can go to this party and you could see ahead that what really happens. So you just have to be very sure enough in what you're doing. Just keep going what you are with a bit more of extra hard work and determination. Well, this is just my love for neurosciences that, as I told you, that I won 3 hackathons organized by Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Boston. I'm also the youngest affiliate member of Royal College of Surgeons, Edinburgh, because of my presentations in cases of neurology and neurosurgery. And as I mentioned, I'm the first president for Dandy Neurosurgical Club in India. There are many more, so you'll get to know. Well, I'll just take 5 more minutes of you to tell you that how can you involve in research. Thomas Edison once said that, I haven't failed. I found 1,000 ways that just don't work. If you see here, technically he failed, but the way you look at life is very important. There would be times, when you can't understand the solution of any, let's say questions you're doing for your preparation. But don't get disheartened because, you're in the process of being a diamond. You're in the process of being extraordinary. Like I remember, there were some questions in from the engineering book that I wasn't able to do. I knew that I won't be, but I knew that I did have that much knowledge that I should be able to. In those cases, like, whenever you're doing some question and you don't know the answer, keep solving it again. I still remember, I tried to solve questions some 5 to 10 times, looking at each and every step where I might have got wrong. Because, that is also the basics of research. If you get the very minimal flaw right from the beginning, just don't look at that, okay, it might be wrong, some calculation or 2 to 3 steps. No, look from the very beginning, start from the scratch and see where you're going wrong. If you see in your preparation and you introspect after this call for a while that, okay, what it had been where where you've gone wrong or where you need preparation, you would get to know. Because if you start from the scratch, you get to know the flaws. And if you cross check those flaws, you'll at the top. So how to involve in research, as I talked about, you know, that I did my first project in my ninth grade. And, there are pretty many people who do many projects in their high school, in their middle school, in the United States, many Scandinavian countries. But I never got the chance because I was in, I'm from a country where people give more preference to theoretical knowledge. They don't really give much preference to practical, but they give many preference to theoretical knowledge. That's why, Indians have a lot knowledge about theories. But if it comes down to actually practicing something, we might fail at times. Not times, most of the time. We do fail in the lab work, but the theoretical knowledge, it is also important. As of now, it's the only thing which should bother you because that's what's going to get through you to the med school. And everything else that just follows. So you have to be very, very sure that you know what you're studying, how much important it is, and where is it going to take you. For research, just keep reading articles. There was a time when I started reading articles. So once you start reading articles, what amazes you, what interests you, there would be a time, when ideas start popping up in your mind automatically. They come up and they go. They come up, they go, they vanish. But that is in such a small chunk of time. And that is the point where you get to know that, okay, wherever you're going is right, it's perfect. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the lecture, think of very basic problems. There's no use if of going to Mars, or there's no use of going to the moon if you can't solve poverty on the earth. There's no fun of discovering other planets if you can't make your own planet better. There's no fun in, spending thousands of dollars of money over going to space and seeing people dying or in your own streets. So just think of the very basic problems in your own home, in your localities. Observe. Nature is the biggest teacher. It gets you to learn so many things. But again, the way you perceive things, as I mentioned in the beginning of how to involve in research, as Edison looked at it, that he didn't fail. Although he failed, he knew, but he took it fortunately that, okay, these are the 1,000 ways that don't work. So what? There has to be one big that's gonna work. But if you think that I'm gonna fail, 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 then you won't think that you'll pass. But if you think that you're failing for a reason, because fail is the first attempt in learning, then you'll be much more determined and much more courageous to get to where you're going. These are just for your references. If anyone wants to contact me, I'm on Instagram. Here's my Gmail account, and I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not really active on Instagram. It would be preferably if you can talk to me over Google, Gmail, or LinkedIn. I would be very happy to help you. And thank you guys. That was it. I hope it helps you somewhere in your life. Sometime it might help you and you get you where you're going. My best wishes are with you all, and I'm open to questions if someone wants to ask anything.
Okay, thank you so much, Bhavya. If anyone has any questions, then please raise your hands using the Zoom raise hand feature right now. Uh, or, or yes, you can type it in the chat if the feature is not working for you. Um, so yes, Nathan, go ahead.
Hi, so can you share some of the research project that you've been involved in high school, and
Sure.
also some research project that you're involved in now? Yeah.
Definitely. So there were just like there was a project, as I mentioned, that was in bioplastics. And that was I think that was my second project. There was a project on, I think, acids that I did in my eighth grade. That wasn't really big of a project, but then my another big project was ninth grade, which was on bioplastics. And that got me through a very important contest of my country. That was National Children's Science Congress. And I was top 30 presenters. I was facilitated by the president of the country. And in my 10th grade, I went over with a project that was called as paper from potato peels. And that made me the top 100 regional finalists of the Global Google Science Fair. And these were my two or three projects that I did in high school. But if you talk about right now, so right now I have, I think, done 3 or 4 projects in neurological sciences. One of them involves an application for diagnosing sleep apnea, which is on anthropometric features. Once you get into med school, or you might be, if you have interest right now, you could read about what sleep apnea is and, why there's no diagnosis and all that stuff. Then another of my project was in diabetic neuropathy that helps to diagnose it in order to prevent amputations. And another of my project was on COVID vaccinations.
All right, thank you, Bhavya. If anyone else has a question, please say so in the chat. All right, since I think Kaval has her hand raised. Kaval, if you'd like to go ahead.
Hi. So I was just wondering, like, if you could like walk us through a day in your life of like what you would do, like as a medical student, or like the classes you take, and like kind of like your study routine.
Sure. So like as you mentioned, about, the med school, like as of now, I'm just like at my home. So that's just, another chilling day for me. I wake up late, I study, I just keep sitting at a place I am. But if you talk about whenever I'm at my med school in the hostels, it's like, my classes are from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. with just an hour gap for lunch. So we just get that 1 to 2 p.m. timings for our lunch break. And, after 5 p.m., the person's so exhausted that you don't really want to study. But as I mentioned, there would be voices around. There would be people who'll take you for granted. There will be people who will distract you a lot that, okay, let's go for this party. But like I know that, I have to be a neurosurgeon. I have to get through where I'm going. So after 5, I just, I come back to my hostel. I like rest for an hour or so. I just make up my room again with, those beautiful pinky flowers and the room fresheners and all. And then I just keep on studying what's been taught because, it's very important for you to study what's being taught in that similar day. You might skip what was taught yesterday, but make sure that you're not skipping what's taught to you at the same day because it's some sort of a recent memory, and if you keep on learning that recent memories, there are connections made in your brain that help you to memorize them better. So you could do, I memorize the same stuff that I've been taught on the same day. And then again, I have a break from 8 to 9 for my dinner. So I study from like some 6 to 8 or 6:30 to 8, what's been taught. And after that, if I get some time, I could just, surf internet during my during my dinner hours between 8 to 9. And again, after 9:30, I sit studying for the next day, what's going to be taught in my next session. So I revise that, and before sleeping, I just, do anything which I cannot memorize in the past. It's not necessary for you to, do or to go through what's gonna be taught the next day. To be honest, it will be beneficial because it'll make your understanding better. Because if you have read something in advance, it will help you understand things better for the next class. But it's not necessary because if you're creating a workload day by day, that's gonna harm you. In the long run, it's not gonna work. It might work for any sort of a class test or any sort of like some sort of an examination, which is a smaller level, but trust me, it's not going to help you in the long run. So make sure that you're not getting a workload and you're not creating a pile of work. Do what's been taught to you the same day. And if you get time, revise what's been taught the previous day or the past week. And if you talk about my weekends, I did enjoy. Don't just get that I'm some nerd person. I'm a person I enjoy a lot either. Like I told you, you have to be an all rounder. You can't just keep studying 24/7. It's not possible. It's not possible for human brain. It won't let you. You need sleep. You need enjoyment. You need people to talk to. Otherwise, you'll just get depressed soul in the country. So on the weekends, I did revise things, but I also enjoyed a lot. It's like, the place where my college is, it's not in like, in a very, I would say in a very good locality, but I think that's the biggest weapon for me because I am very lazy. I'm like, why, if I have to travel so long to get enjoyment, I'll stay in my room and study. So, that everything, as I told you, me not getting into number one college of the country maybe was beneficial because I got in a locality which is no more distracting for me. So you have to be optimistic. Whatever, it's fine if you can't, cover up what's been taught to you, but make sure you have to be sacrificial. You can't be that optimistic and keep a whole workload because it's not going to help you in the better run.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Bhavya. Does anyone else have any questions? Yes, Utica, you have your hand raised. You can go ahead.
Hi, sorry. Um, I'm interested in the medical field, but I'm not so keen about physics. So is it advised to not take physics in school but continue it in coaching centers?
Yuthika, can you just tell me which country do you belong to?
I'm from India, but I study in Dubai, UAE.
Okay. So, like I said, if physics gonna make a big chunk, I would say, of your examinations, you'll have to do it. Because again, like, I mean, as I'll just tell you one more thing that, every person has their own preferences. I was like that, I had to get into the best college of the country, the best med school of my country. So I had to do it. I had to push myself a lot, even if I did not like it. But eventually, as I started to do it, I started liking it. It it might be that you won't like it, but if it's gonna make a big chunk of your examinations, you'll have to do it no matter what.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, everyone, since we don't have any time left in the webinar, if anyone has any questions, please mail them to biologyforbetter@gmail.com, and then we'll pass them on to Bhavya. Now, just to quickly wrap up, Nathan will be giving a vote of thanks.
Hi everyone. On behalf of the Biology for Better board, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Ms.Bhavya and for sharing her story and experiences. I personally found it really helpful, and I hope you guys did too. I would also like to say thank you to everyone here for attending our first ever webinar, and I hope to see you all in our future webinars. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. We look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Thank you guys for having me. All the best to everyone and do well.